Welcome to Rooted in Power, Jovana. Can you introduce yourself very briefly? Then we're going to get into a really big discussion about goddess culture.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. My name is Jovana. I also practice under the name of Soror Mystica, which means mystical sister. She is the alchemical part to the alchemists of the medieval age. So that's kind of an archetype that I embody in all of the work that I do, which is tends to be varied. So I am a hands-on sexual shamanism practitioner working with people one-on-one to awaken their full embodiment, including their sexual energy. I'm also a facilitator of transformational ritual spaces and workshops. And then I also am the co-founder of a production company called One Conscious Experiences. And we are focused on bringing in beautiful, large-scale events that raise consciousness in and around Toronto. One of them being the Toronto Tantra Festival, and now we've added a new festival called Anthropos, the Consciousness and Sexuality Festival. So lots of different things going on, but the thorough line is really embodied awakening. It's like how to be fully here as a human being, as matter, making love to spirit in every moment. So that's kind of what I do.
Love it. I um I was introduced to you at the Tantra Festival a few years ago in Toronto, and there I noticed there is like a goddess culture. It feels like a lot of new people to Tantra, like they seem to be like wearing very similar outfits and having very similar like embodied movements. And it's kind of like their introduction to this is what goddess looks like. And then in Toronto, I've noticed too, there's like goddess gatherings that are private, but people like only wear white and it's usually only white women. And it's very Venusian, right? It's like very pleasure, so, like touched. And um, so I'm really curious about like when we think of goddess, it's very much in like the light realm. And my culture is like the range of the goddess, right? The dark goddess is one of the big ones, Kali. And I don't see that as much. And also from my culture, it's like we don't say we all women are goddesses or we are goddesses. We say the goddess is within us, and we invoke the archetypes of the goddess. But we are humans, and the lessons of our soul is to be human, and then invoke the power of the goddess when we need rage, when we need power, when we need surrender. There's so much we need abundance, right? How do we embody those? So I'll just leave that there and just, I'd love to hear what you say. I actually haven't discussed this with you, so I'm really excited to see how this lands.
Yeah, we're going in wild. Like, I love that this is like a real living conversation. The first thing that really stands out is yes, there is a reawakening goddess culture. Like the goddess is rising. I've had that phrase in sort of as a mantra in my mind for um over over 10 years now. The goddess is rising, the goddess is rising. And it's been really felt like in humanity. And I think that that is a response to the the repression of the goddess, that has taken place over the last 3 to 5 thousand years, where the temples were toppled, churches were built on top of sacred sites that were devoted to goddess worship. A lot of the lineages and the orders of the priestesses that were devotees of various goddesses, that was broken apart, and that was really sealed by the almost like 4 centuries of the witch hunts in Europe, where the last threads of those kind of worship practices of earth-based wisdom and spirituality was literally like terrorized out of humanity, particularly in the West. And so when we say the goddess is rising, like, or she has risen actually now in the last few years, like I feel her palpably here, that's a very real thing. And then, of course, on top of that, we have this kind of Instagram dimension, right? And things get trendy, and we are a very like visually focused, aesthetic culture. Um, and so, yes, on top of that very real energetic resurgence of the goddess, there is this layer of the outfits and the looks and the self-proclamations of I'm a goddess, and this kind of maybe a little bit of kind of an immature, maybe a little bit of an inauthentic, like cringy aspect of the whole thing, where it's like, if I just act the role, I don't actually have to meet the depth of what this truly is. And that brings me to your second part around that, in the metaphysics, the tantric metaphysics, but also the earth-based animist spiritual metaphysics, the goddess is everything you see. The goddess is everything that is manifest in matter. And so she is all. And the goddess inevitably and directly leads you to the dark. And when I say that, for a lot of people, that brings up the like oh, the dark, that's dangerous, right? But that is precisely how the goddess was crushed. The dark was equated with evil. The dark was equated with sin. But when I say dark, I mean it in its original definition, which is dense, matter, mother, of earth, of flesh, of blood, of bone, including excrement, including decay, including death and grief, including mortality, including rage, like all of that is the goddess, and all of that is the density of the dark, so beautifully, personified by figures like Kali, as you mentioned, right? So to me, goddess is all. And if I may go on to another piece of what you mentioned, so I think that there is, what I see is that even in this kind of new age spirituality, reawakening of, or like a returning to certain, what we imagine are like certain ancient ways of being, people calling for, the destruction of the patriarchy, and there's like a movement of this, so people want something different. What I'm noticing is that there's actually a lot of um, Christian morality that has just been like transposed onto what we call new age spirituality, and you can see that in the love and light movement. It's the spiritual paths that are like heart and above, right? I'm gonna like sit in my meditations. I'm gonna I'm gonna open my heart, call in Christ consciousness. I'm gonna vibrate into the astral realms to meet the star seed kin, you know. But anything like below that is terrifying. And for me, a complete and holistic human spirituality and devotional path to God Goddess inevitably includes the lower realms, the lower chakras. It includes our body, and it includes our sexuality, and whether we were raised within a Judeo-Christian or Islamic sort of paradigm or not, the morality has seeped into broader culture. For many people, sexuality is still, if not sinful, because they wouldn't use that language, it's shameful, and it's repressed, and it's dangerous. And so to me, that's the split, and that's where the goddess lives.
When you were speaking, it reminded me of the Taoist concept of a woman's center of gravity is actually the womb, it's the lower half, and the men's is in the heart. So if you're pushing women to like be heart centered, open your heart, it's very ungrounding. There's no anchoring, and the energy is just circulating, and they go like, ooh, they just kind of go off the deep end. So we need to train ourselves to be comfortable being in the center of gravity of ourselves, which is the lower half. And I'm curious, like when you give training to people, when you introduce them to that, what's the resistance that you hear?
It's a lot of fear. It's a lot of fear, because for many people, it's learning early on that um, dwelling in that area of my being is dangerous, right? It can lead to unwanted attention. It can expose me to unwanted touch. It's also there's purity culture, right? So it's like, it'll bring shame to the family. There's so many cultural, energetic, emotional, and psychological imprints um, around uh, anything to do below the waist. And for women, womb consciousness is something that has been um, really like I find there's a tragic disconnect in most women from their wombs. And um as you say, and I totally agree, and like in my own experience, uh resting and sort of moving from the womb is when I am most aligned as a woman. It's a very different energy than, from the heart, but certainly from the head as well. Like, wow. And so, yeah, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of um, rage, frustration, but underneath all of it, I think is a lot of fear that's been like encoded into people's bodies.
So do you find that when people try to access that, it's confusing because a lot of it may not even be their own material? Like it's from their great
Oh,
grandmother. It's like, why am I? It's overwhelming and it can't be mentally processed. Do you find that?
yeah, it can certainly happen that people will kind of tap into like intergenerational or even like collective trauma, um, or like imprints, and I hear wow, the stories that I'm privileged to hear, the sort of the revelations that I get to be privy to, as people share these profound stories of, loss, longing, and pain. And it could have been that somebody's grandmother was violated, raped, and she simply closed up energetically. And her daughter was raised in an environment where the mother, the matriarch, the woman, was closed. And so that daughter herself does not have to go through that same experience of ever having been violated herself, but she will pick up and learn an imprint from a mother who has shut herself down, who has that has now translated into a certain posture of body, that has translated into how she interacts with men, whether that's the father in the home or just men in society. It's the little um, tone in her voice as she says goodbye to her daughter going out for the night, the little tone of danger. Or it's we are such receptive, sensitive beings, like all of this we can pick up on. And so, yeah, it can move through generations. And sometimes it really isn't our own. Um, and this is where I find the the goddess energies are so powerful. Like with Kali, with rage and fire. Like when the rage is there, and it's almost too much for me to bear because it is mine and my mother's and my grandmother's and all women's. Like these goddess energies can come and like carry it through for us. And that can lead to tremendous like personal benefit and transformation for that individual in that moment. That's for men and women. Because when we're working with the body, as I said, all matter, all manifest is the goddess. It's the feminine principle. And so it's for men and women. Like there's this, I think, kind of again with the Instagram and the outfits and everything, it's like, oh, goddess is for the girls. And it's not that at all. It's not that at all. She is
Is the
there. Yeah.
that was the original question that brought this whole thing. Because people are saying that all women are goddesses, and then if I was to say all men are gods, there's an automatic like no from everybody, right? Like this. So where does that land for you? Like how do men become that? Are men supposed to be in the goddess energy? How do we enter the god energy?
All women are goddesses, which to me translates to like all people are God, right? We are God, and that tracks with sort of, again, this kind of new age spiritual movement, where it's like we are God, and that means that we are exclusively responsible for the nature of our reality, not just our personal one, but our like co-created collective one. And that's a tremendous amount of responsibility, and that takes a tremendous amount of self-awareness and um, healing and shadow work and all of that, right? So it's like, yes, we are all divine creators, like as an expression of the divine that moves through us, that has like animated this flesh. Um, so on the like on the one side, it's like, yes, we are all divine, let's say gods and goddesses. But I think that there is something, there is something like you say, there's a retraction when you kind of mirror that to all men are God at large. Like not for me, actually, because I work with women, I work with men in deep intimate spaces and in one-on-one, and I have the gift and the capacity and the training to see all men and all women and all beings who come into my space and sit in front of me as God, as the divine, right? And this is, I'm sure one of the core deep mystical practices within Tantra, which is the transmutational practice. It's the ability to, oh, sorry, not transmute, sorry, transfiguration practice, where the ability to sit and gaze. This is what people are like, oh, more eye gazing in like a Tantra workshop. But we're not just like having a staring contest. It's a training and a practice to actually be able to open up the gaze so as to see through the layers of this being to the divine spark that is literally like their soul shining through, and that singular drop from the ocean of God that has manifested in this being. And so the transfiguration of all beings as the divine is something that I practice. But I think in like the cultural moment that we are in, with really dark shit being exposed and on a large scale, the sort of the spiritual vacuum that we are in as modern human beings right now, the damage that has been done to men through patriarchy, the damage that has been done to women through patriarchy. um it's there is like like, no, men are shit, men are not God, like how could you. But to me, it's like that's the reclamation that we need to be going through. That again, it's like deconstructing the patriarchy is not, in my view, the project of crushing anything that is masculine. Because what we're doing is we are repeating the same pattern that happened 3,000 years ago when they crushed the goddess. They took down her temple, they trampled her ancient sites, they destroyed her arts of worship. So are we going to tear down the patriarchy and do the same so that the feminine can rise, and then we're again in an off-kilter imbalance? To me, deconstructing patriarchy is deconstructing the systems and the paradigms of thought and being, and like a whole civilizational approach that is predominantly centered around the masculine principle. That construct needs to be deconstructed so that the true masculine and the true feminine can restore their flow, their balance, and then we have it all. We have it all within, we have it all without. And then, yes, we are all divine. We're all expressions of God, Goddess. Does that make
As you're
sense?
speaking, it makes sense, and it's helping me frame, the question we started with. Because when people are saying every woman is a goddess, my mind went to, like, because I come from, the hundreds of goddess culture. You're saying that you are on the level of Lakshmi or Durga, or like but then you say, when it talks about men, you said God, so it's singular, it's one being. It's totally different in my mind. So I was thinking more abstractly, like, we do think that there's hundreds of goddesses, but there's actually only one goddess, and they're archetypes of the one singular one. But it's, again, a language thing. We don't say men are gods. We say men are God, right? Women are, do you know what I'm saying? It's plural, singular. And
Yes.
that was where I couldn't capture it. So we say women are the goddess. I can go, yeah, okay, great. Women are a goddess is different for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think the plurality of sort of the goddess manifestation, it tracks to the sort of the metaphysical frame that I know to be true, which is that the masculine principle is the single pointed focus of consciousness. So in the Buddhist, I can't remember what it's called now, but there's that classic, like, the Buddhist wheel of all the different dimensions of, samsara. In the middle, there's like a tiny, tiny, tiny little black dot, the void, the all, the nothing, the still point in this spinning cycle of appetites and desires and disappointments and all of that.
Mm.
And so, to me, the pinnacle of like masculine divinity, God, Shiva, whatever, it's that single point of consciousness. We have that. The goddess is the whirl of creation that emanates from that. She is the chaos, she swirls, she's the light, she's the dark, she's matter. And so, in many ways, it makes sense that there is like a multiplicity of her as she manifests in all her different flavors and shades and colors, because she is the manifest. And so it's this, multiplicity with singularity. There's a beautiful polarity there. It's the stillness with eternal movement and creative chaos. There's a beautiful polarity there. It's the masculine, the feminine, like in every aspect, it's like polarized.
Yeah.
Um, and it kind of, you can also, I feel like, see it tracking with the gender expression of men and women as well, right? Women tend to be changing, shifting. It's encoded in our moon cycle, right? We have these highs and lows. We're open, we're contracted, we're loving, sexy, turned on. We're like, witchy, dark, don't fucking touch me, in like a 28-day cycle. Whereas men with their hormonal, cycle, 24-hour cycle that's attuned more to the sun than it is to the moon, they're a little bit more steady. They change like over like eras of their life rather than over a month, right? So there is something there, the singularity and the multiplicity that is interesting to kind of explore in that way.
Yes. So how are you introducing this to your community? Like, when we talk about the maiden version of embodying the goddess, how do you bring in the mother and the crone and all of these different versions of what a goddess can look like?
I feel like most men are starved for divine mother energy. They may not call it that. They may not have the word, like, in their psyche it might not be categorized as that, but when you get down to the actual energetic exchange, the interaction, like what their system is invoking and calling for, what is really landing into their being in a nourishing way is the divine mother. And so that's a lot of the work that I do directly with men. And then in my group settings, in my sort of like transformational rituals, ceremonies, workshops that I do, primarily, this is a lot of the work that I do with women. uh I bring in the dark goddesses. So it's bringing women who, again, like I said, might be very like heart-centered, open. They're in the upper realms, bringing, working with Aphrodite energy or Sophia, or my work is very focused on the body, the sexuality, the eros, erotic trance is a lot of the work that I do with women. Um, Womb work, void work. Yeah, so it's kind of trying to balance it out a little bit, because there's so much of the love and light and the fluff and looking pretty and looking goddessy, when actually it's like dirt and spit and tears and snot and screams and growls, and like she's there, she's calling for us there. So that is another aspect. And then, at Tantra Fest, we really do our very best to have a balance as much as possible of um all of these energies, to create. And it's like 375, 400 people are going to go where they're drawn, right? Not everyone's going to be drawn to the embodied dark goddess work. Some are just more comfortable still, or still discovering, their heart. Or so it's like, I just kind of, with the Tantra Festival, it's like it's there, and then I really trust that people are going to gravitate or be magnetized to the things that they need in that moment, or that will sort of introduce them or reveal to them what is possible, or where they can go a little deeper.
Do you find the men you work with, or just men that you encounter, are so they're exposed to the kind of soft, gentle, loving, nurturing goddess energy, and then the mother archetype, the great mother, probably also is that similar, being held and nurtured and unconditionally loved. So how do they feel, or how do they react when they're like, you have the blood and spit and anger and rage and like not beautiful version? How do they respond to that?
Yeah, I think this is the new, like, horizon of the work that the collective is needing to do at this time, actually, is to first, and like, I don't know that men yet have had, at least, like, as far as I know, in our environment in Toronto, around what's going on, what kind of spaces are being created, what kind of gatherings people are having. I don't know that we've had a whole lot of exposure to her in that way. Uh, and so my primary focus right now is on getting the women comfortable with themselves, because we have to do that work first. Like, we have to unlock that primal, raw, feminine, dark goddess power within ourselves first, and work through all of the shit that brings up in terms of, shame and guilt, and dissolution of ego. Like, what? I'm not beautiful. What if I'm, what will people think? And it's like connecting with that raw force. Like, we have to do that first. And when the women are comfortable, um, I'm really excited by what becomes possible in terms of like initiating men into that. Of like, this is woman too. And like I think a lot of men get to see or you know, are if everything goes well, I think a lot of men get to see when their woman is birthing. I think they finally get to see that um in that intimate moment, and maybe the woman gets to see it too. For like, I feel like it might be the first contact that either of them are having with that raw, feminine, wild, crazy, intense, messy power of the feminine and of goddess as she births life, creates life. Um, but outside of that, I don't know that she's really here yet. And so I'm really excited by what becomes possible when we have, enough women who have unlocked that within themselves, bringing the men into that and showing and revealing. Because I think yeah, it'll unlock a lot of things for the collective.
Yeah, that's amazing. Are you finding, you said it's emerging, but do you find now men are more like, my role is to be like firm and still and like holding like power. So they're not even accessing this wildness within them.
Yeah, and there is some wild man um work that is being done, and I think I just generally think like our like rewilding of humanity in general is like where we like we're getting so castrated, it feels like energetically, right? Like the tech just wants us easily categorizable because that works for the algo, and I'm like, no,
Yeah.
we are so much more than a series of preferences, and so yeah, I think that the wildness, the rewilding of humanity, again, we can characterize that as the goddess or not, but that's going to be, I think, a major aspect of like whether we can really make it out or through this digital age. Like, how do we integrate the tech without it taking over, like literally us becoming more like the robots rather than the robots integrating into human life and serving our purposes and needs. To me, it's that wild life force. Like, are we tapped in, or is that just completely getting shut down? That's the question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Everyone's like wearing the gray sweatpants. Everyone looks the same. That's my thing with the goddess culture. Like everyone looks the same. They buy the same outfit from the same retailer, like same colors. And I'm so resistant. Like everyone wear red, everyone wear white. I'm like, can we just be ourselves? Is that okay?
Yeah, like, can you be the goddess in your sweatpants,
Yeah.
right? Because it's ultimately not about um do you have the right candle? Do you have the right outfit? Do you like this kind of spiritual consumerism thing is yeah, I mean, it is what it is. We live in this late stage capitalism reality. That's just what's going to happen. Anything that picks up a little bit of traction with like a group of people is going to get commodified. And like, to me, I refuse to allow the forces of commodification to actually take away from the depth of the experience that I'm having with this thing, right? And so um my direct relationship with like goddess energy, my expression of the goddess, even though sometimes it might look like that, because you know all those looks they're harkening back to like a collective memory of an imagination that we have of like what the Vestal virgins would have looked like, or what the priestesses of Isis would have like. There is something there, and we're all kind of like grasping for this dream. Um, so even if I sometimes do look like that, I don't, or if I'm in my sweatpants at my altar, like my relationship to the energy itself is sacrosanct. Like it's untouched by that. And so on the one hand, it's like it's so much more than the outfit. On the other hand, it's like I would hate to think that there is like an aversion or kind of a judgment. This is like a rich white girl thing about the whole movement from people from the outside of it, because it to kind of discredit it and devalue it, because there's something actually real and true going on that is
Yeah.
yours to discover.
Yeah, I agree. And that when we say like make the rules around dress code, we lose that. So in my culture, again, we do a lot of adornment because we're saying like I'm sacred, and that's how we invoke the goddess within. And I'd love to be that to kind of come into it's like let's invoke what's there. What's the archetype you're working with? Come as you
That's
are. That's more what I'm framing it as.
Yeah, yeah. And like, yeah, in all of my workshops where we want to bring in that like self-devotional practice of adornment, for me, it's always like dress to express, like what is coming through you in this moment? What are you embodying? Uh, and that can be very sexy, or that can be like, I just want to be in like a shroud, and like all of it. And,
Amazing.
like that brings us back to this sort of multiplicity thing. Um, And there is one more thing I wanted to introduce that I have been thinking a lot about also with relation to this kind of goddess topic. Like every woman is a goddess. We are divine gods and goddesses. There's also a little bit of like a spiritual ego that can come into this. That I think again with like mapped on top of the outfits and the Instagram and the things, like it's kind of ballooning into this um almost like, even though we're acting all divine and devotional, there's a loss of reverence, you know or maybe there wasn't reverence to begin with, and we're certainly not getting to a more reverent place. um And so there's two terms that I want to introduce that I don't know if many people think about, but I think it's worth thinking about this, and where we stand, like where we personally like how we think about what the world is and what God is. Um, there's pantheism, which is the belief that all is God, and then there is panentheism, which is the belief that all is in God. And the major difference between these two paradigms is that in panentheism, everything that you see is God. So we are God. We are part of God. The whole universe, all of creation, nature, everything is God. But also is within God. But God, that means that God is bigger than the sum of the parts. There is something that is God that is contains everything that is, but everything that is not all of God. And when I investigated my own beliefs around, you know, the nature of universe and God and divinity, that's really where I landed. I landed on panentheism. All is in God, as opposed to all is God. And the reason I gravitate towards that is because there is a humbling element when I sit in the posture of panentheism. It activates my reverence, because yes, I am God, and there's something healing in that, for again the sort of the Christian imprint, which took God out away from us and like mediated it through the church and the papal system and the sovereignty of kings, and like it left us without God, and it was sacrilege to claim God for yourself, right? They burned the witches for this reason. And so there's something healing in saying, yes, every woman is a goddess. I'm a goddess. You're a goddess. You're God. I'm God. We are God. Yes, everything that is God, but it is within God that is beyond even that. So that's just something where, you know, I kind of philosophically wanted to frame yeah, this question of, are we all gods and goddesses? And it's like, yes, we are, but also be reverent, you know, be reverent.
I love that you brought it back to the humility, because that's exactly why this whole thing was out for me. And it reminds me of what you said, the Ram Dass quote, treat everybody you meet as if they're God in drag. And
Mhm.
so, you know, even though the homeless person on the street, they're God, but they have the avatar. So yeah, there's something there that you're saying, like we're the avatar with the human, and then within us, or we're a big part of the bigger God. I mean, I like
Yeah, yeah.
that. Before we close, I did want to ask you a question. So another thing that's on my mind is, you know, we're working with power with women and invoking all these huge goddess energies. And then, you know, when I was in playing in like the Tantra community, and then I was in a relationship with somebody who was teaching Tantra as well. And there was something confusing for me there, because there's a bit of distortion with polarity teaching in terms of, you know, I'm a man, so I'm the leader. But then if women are rising and they're in the power, how do we balance that? Like the men are like, oh, this is what correct. I should be the leader, the powerful one, the decision maker. How do we balance both of those?
I feel like that is a topic for a whole other podcast because I have like a lot to say, and I think there's a lot to unpack there. Just like with all of this goddess work, I think there's a lot of supposedly like tantric polarity teachings that are actually, again, like Christian traditional mores seeping in. Like there's so many layers. It's like very muddy waters right now. Um, and I think for me, and just in short, and I'm happy to you know, do a deep dive on this later on if you would have me back. But um, for me, in short, the answer is there are different kinds of powers. They're two totally different kinds of powers, and they're meant to be awakened. And I believe that they are designed to be in perfect synergy. Like, I think fully unleashed embodied feminine power is by its nature in synergy with fully unleashed embodied masculine power. How that shows up in actual human relationships, in partnership, in marriage, in monogamy and non-monogamy, in people that have this kind of body and that kind of body, and same-sex couples, and that is like a whole other um exploration. And I do not consider myself a relationship expert. I like, it's not really an area that I focus in, but ultimately I think it's like for that couple to negotiate and determine. But I do believe that both beings in their embodied sovereign power, it works. It's designed to work. And right now, I think, again, culturally, we're in this moment of rediscovery of like, what is that actually? How does that translate into dishes and laundry and childcare and finances? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a big old shift that is happening for a lot of relationships, and then there's just a lot of made up bullshit, if I can say that, from people who really don't know what they're talking about. That's just confusing things and playing on weaknesses and shadows, and you know, it's like kind of adding fuel to the flame of the struggle that is happening between men and women right now in at large. Yeah, so lots to talk about
Right.
there.
Mhm. In Hinduism, the gods and goddesses who are in union, they're always equal. There's never a domination. And sometimes there's a correction. Sometimes Kali stands on Shiva's chest and like goes like, check yourself, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and I rarely hear stories of the male goddess correcting the woman. It's usually the woman who's like really owning the power dynamic and correcting the field. And I just
Mm,
think it's so interesting how we're all trying to navigate this as these messy humans and trying to understand power. And what you said is like different kinds of power. That's the answer. We're not fighting for the same pot of power.
yeah, yeah. And how it shows up and when it's needed, when feminine leadership is needed and in what domains and realms, and when masculine leadership is needed and it has its own domains and realms, and then the level of consciousness that you need to know, like what is called for, first within yourself, right? As you navigate your own life and business and love and work and all of that, but then like with another human being, it's like, whew, praise. Like, I mean, one of my teachers has always said that like relationship is the fastest path to spiritual awakening that you could have, right?
For sure.
It's gonna
How do
take
people find you and work with you?
Oh, hey, yeah, great question. So I am on Instagram as Soror _Mystica.
Can you
You
spell
can,
that?
yes, SOROR _ MYSTICA, Soror _Mystica on Instagram. Also my website, www.sorormystica.ca, because I'm a Canadian gal. Those are the two main ways. And then there's, of course, TorontoTantraFestival.com. We still have about 20 early bird tickets left. It's a great time to jump in. And there's the Anthropos Festival, ANTRO. Oh God, am I going to be able to spell this in my?
Put it in the show notes. I'll put all the
Yeah,
links
yeah,
in the
we'll
show
put it in the
notes.
show. I'm not a great, like, I need to have it in front of me. Anthropos Festival, that's coming up in June. So those are some great ways to get involved. And I would just also love to hear from people, like their thoughts and reactions and ideas and responses to anything that we've shared here today. I'm always happy to have a conversation. So feel free to DM me and reach out.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on this conversation with me.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thanks for having me.